Hello class, welcome to Deliverable 2 part number 3. In this video we are going to be setting up a static IP address and also SSH. SSH, as you already know because you did the research, will allow us to connect from our regular virtual machine that we use for doing everything we want to do to our server. Right, this is great because it allows us more flexibility, and it also mirrors a lot of the work that is done in the real world because nobody goes and sits down in front of a server. We always manage that remotely. So it's very good that we get to play around with these kind of environments. So let's get started. So we're gonna log into our server. So we go here, webmaster, and like always my password is wrong. Okay, now that we are in here, the first thing we need to do, we need to write down a couple of things, right? The first thing I want you to write down is your IP address and your router's IP address. So those two things we're gonna need. So why don't we get that first? So let's do host name minus I cut the. Okay. So this is going to write this down, which is 192. In my case, 192.168.1.151. Yours is going to be different, obviously. So write that down somewhere. That is your server's IP address, right? So now another thing we need to figure out is what is the subnet mask of this IP address, and we can figure that out with the IP addr command, which is for short for IP address, and we are going to grep inet. And then we are gonna get, actually we don't need that. All we need to do is get the first line that's gonna be returned by this. Nope. IP address. See, this is kind of messy. We don't want that. We want to get just the IP addresses. So we're gonna do grep, give me every line that contains the word init. And now we have, you see that one that says, that third line that says 192.168.1.151/24. That /24 is important. So keep that in mind or write it down somewhere. Yours might be different depending on how your router is configured, right? That will all vary. What is important is that you write that down. Let me narrow that down so that you see what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this line here in my case. This line here, 192.168.151/24. That's very important. We need to remember that /24. Yours might be a /16, /32. I don't know. I don't know how your router is configured, but write that down because that is your IP address and the subnet mask that is being used right now for your computer. Next, we're gonna get the router's IP address. So for that, we're gonna do IP route, and notice that this is gonna return a bunch of stuff. We just need the first line, so I'm gonna do head -1, and the router's IP address in my case is 192.168.1.1. See how it says default via 192.168.1.1. That is what I need to write down. So write that down somewhere because that is your router's IP address, and we are going to need it. Now we're gonna clear our screen, considering you wrote that information down, and we are gonna set up a static IP address. So we are gonna do, you can either use Vim, VI, or Nano for this part. I will use Nano because I will assume most of you are familiar with Nano and it's just easier than Vim. But be my guest, use even Pico if you want to. So we're gonna do sudo nano, right? And then we are gonna type the following path: etc net plan, because Ubuntu uses net plan. And then here, if you have already a file that is named like this, 01 net configuration YAML. If you have that file, you're gonna edit this file. But if you don't have this file, then we're gonna create this file. Now make sure that you're typing this name correctly. Again, etc netplan 01 -sign net cfg for configuration that YAML, YAML. Press enter over here, type your password, and now you're gonna be greeted with an empty file that we're gonna type some configurations in here. So you need to make sure that you're typing this correctly, including the tabs, because YAML is a tab is a tab indented language. So the indentation here matters a lot. This type of configuration file, the indentation needs to match correctly, otherwise it won't work. So let's start typing here. So we're gonna start with the word network and then colon. Press enter here and tab once. Here we're gonna type version, sure we're typing slow, space 2. Press enter, tab one more, and then Ethernets, colon. Actually, I missed something over here. We are gonna type here renderer, and then network D. Then here in Ethernets, we're gonna press enter and we're gonna type the name. Again, we're gonna indent once, indent twice, and we're gonna type ETH0. ETH0. This is the name of your network card. Now we're gonna press enter here, and then we're gonna create another indentation, 1, 2, 3, and then under ETH0, we are gonna create the following: addresses. Again, make sure it's properly spelled, addresses. I made a typo, so I need to fix it. Addresses, and then here we are going to press enter and create another indentation. Here we're gonna provide the IP address of our computer, the one that we want to be static, and the network mask. We're gonna start with a hyphen or a minus sign, 192.168.1.151/24. This is in my case. Remember, you wrote this information down earlier. Now we're gonna press enter over here and we're gonna create another indentation. Well, right underneath addresses, right, we're gonna create name servers. So name servers, colon, name servers. Again, always double check your spelling because this is problematic. So in name servers, sorry, that doesn't go on a new line. So in name servers here, we indent, and now we type addresses. So addresses. These are gonna be the addresses of the name servers that we are going to be using. So for this case, I will be using 1.1.1. I'm also going to be using Google's DNS, A.A.A.A, and I'm also gonna be using the other one, which is A.A.4.4. Right? Now that we've done this, we are gonna provide the routes. So routes go right underneath name server. So we're gonna call this routes. And as you may guess, this is your router's IP address. So we're gonna set this to default, and then default. And then here, right underneath we're gonna set via 192.168.1.1. And you guessed it, that is the IP address of my router, right? In your case, you need to put the IP address of your router there. Now, before we save this, let's double check the spelling one more time slowly. Network, version, renderer, Ethernets, ETH0, addresses, 192.168.1.151/24, name servers, addresses, 11111, AAA44, routes to via default. Okay, perfect. Now we're gonna save this file, Control O, press enter, and now we're gonna do Control X to exit. Now the next command here is to enable this net plan. So the command for this will be here sudo net plan apply perfect. Now sudo net plan apply. If you don't get an error message, you're good to go, right? If you get an error message, it's probably because your indentation is wrong and you need to double check that you're indenting things correctly. Now let's do again. Now let's do another check. See, make sure that your indentation is proper, and if it's proper, this should work successfully. Now let's make sure that my computer internet connection is working. So we're gonna do a ping C4, sorry, minus C4, and we're gonna ping google.com, right? This is gonna say, hey Google, are you there? Yes, I'm here. Now, if you see a 0% packet lost, you are good. Your computer successfully has a static IP address and is reachable. You can also open a new tab here in your computer, in your regular computer, and type the IP address of your server, 192.168.1.151, which is my IP address for my server. And if you get the Ubuntu page, it means great success. Okay, so we're gonna close this and we are going to clear our screen. Now the next part is to enable SSH, right? So the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to allow SSH connection into our server. So we're gonna do sudo ufw allow SSH. Press enter. Good. Now let's make sure that SSH is running. So we're gonna do sudo systemctl status ssh.service, and yes, it's running. Great. So we're gonna clear our screen, and now it's time for us to do a couple of things with our virtual machine. So the first thing that I want to do with my virtual machine is this is my regular virtual machine, so I'm going to go to settings and I'm gonna change the network adapter to bridge. I'm gonna click OK. Right, so now my regular computer can also access this machine. So we're gonna move to details and we're gonna click on start. Gonna minimize this. Okay, now because setting up SSH can be, a little tricky, I created a guide for, designed for this class, but pretty much anybody can use. So if we go to CIS106.com and you go to SSH guide, here you're gonna find step-by-step instructions on how to set up SSH from one virtual machine to another virtual machine, right? It also has a section for port forwarding for those people who either want to do port forwarding instead of doing a bridge adapter into a virtual machine, right? So with that said, let's move along. I'm gonna sign in into my computer. The first thing that I'm gonna do over here is open a terminal, and before we do anything, we need to make sure we have SSH installed into our computer. So we are going to simply install SSH. It's called OpenSSH server. So here, make sure we have SSH here. This should be very quick. Okay, SSH has been successfully installed in this computer. Now we can connect from one computer to another. For instance, to do this, all we have to do is type SSH, and here we type the username of our computer here, which in my case is webmaster. So this is the username that I use for logging in into my server. And then the IP address of my computer, my server, right? Where I am connecting to. 192.168.1.151 in my case. We're gonna press enter over here. It's gonna ask us, we're gonna do yes. Remember when we were doing this for GitHub, we type our password, and notice, look at my username and look at my location. Now I can do whatever I want to this computer. Any command that I run over here is gonna be run over here. I can update the server if I want, sudo apt update. Right, remember our the commands that we were using before. You know, look at the history. This is the history over here in this computer. For example, I can take a look at, let's do cat etc netplan 01. Remember the little file we were working on? Now this is my server. I successfully connected. Now if I'm done working on the server, all I have to do is type exit and I'm out. The connection has been closed, right? SSH is great. Now the problem here is that, see, every time that you connect to your server, you're gonna have to type your password. See, it's a little bit annoying. If you want, you can leave it as this and always type your password. Or you can do what we do with GitHub. We can simply connect using an SSH key. So for that, we need to generate a key first. So we're gonna do SSH key gen. This is going to generate a key for us to use. And yeah, the default location is fine. If you want to type a passphrase to make it more secure, it's fine. But this project is a proof of concept, so you know we don't need to do that. I do recommend you to do that in production though. Now, next we are gonna copy this key into our server, and the command is a little long, but again, all of that information is in the article that you have on my website, so you can just go over there. Now we're gonna do SSH copy ID -i, and then we are going to put the location of our ID. So this is located inside SSH ID RSA.pub. That's the file that you need to send to your server, because that's your public key, which is going to connect with the private key in your computer. Then now we do web server webmaster at 192.168.1.1, sorry, that 151, because that's my my server, and press enter. We're gonna do the same thing again. We're gonna type yes, put our password in here, and now we have successfully connected to our server using SSH, using an SSH key. If I exit from the server and I try to connect one more time to my server, look what happens. It shouldn't be asking me for password because I am using my SSH key. Let me make sure that this is correct. Yeah, this is correct. Webmaster 151. Yeah, that's correct. Yep, that's perfectly fine. Let me do exit. Okie dokie. Now let's also test this out. Now another thing that you can do is you can connect using also the host name of your server. For instance, SSH webmaster at web server. And now you don't even need to remember your IP address, because this is gonna work just the same. So now that we have done this, we can exit this. As a matter of fact, since we're done with the video, right, we set up SSH and we set up a static IP, we can test something out. Why don't we turn this computer, the server, off from our regular virtual machine? So shut down now. Oh, you're giving me problems. Don't worry. Sudo can do whatever it wants. And there you go. Isn't that great? Now, again, like we did before, we're going to turn all of this off and we're going to take a snapshot. So, an alternative to the shutdown command, it's a good opportunity to show you, is this one, tell init 0. Right? It only works if your system is using init, so keep that in mind. Now, let's go to VirtualBox, and here we are going to go to snapshots. We're going to take a new one. We're going to call this snapshot number 3, SSH setup. Click on OK, and here we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take a snapshot of my virtual machine as well, of my regular virtual machine. Snapshot 2, SSH setup. And that's it. I'll see you in the next video.